Let me ask you a question this morning. Have you ever been in a situation, maybe a season of your life or a particular situation where you felt like things were just going so well that you almost felt nervous? Right? You felt like, the other shoe is about to drop, right? Things are going too well. Or maybe things are going so bad, it just seems like one bad thing after another, after another, after another. When things are going good and life feels calm, sometimes we start bracing ourselves for the storm, for something bad to happen. And I want to tell you, I don't ask God to give me sermon illustrations, but I got to tell you, I was wrestling a little bit with the intro to the sermon this morning, and Jake and I were talking, and we came with this waiting for the other shoe to drop, and how things go from good to bad, and sometimes from bad, it seems like they go to worse. And so, I didn't ask God for an illustration, but He gave me one anyway. Friday night, really early Saturday morning, so yesterday, at 2 o'clock in the morning, I just woke up. Anywhere you just wake up and you don't know why, there's no reason, and you can't get, for you younger people, it's called insomnia, and it's called being old, right? I watched a meme this morning that showed a kid fall out of a tree. It says when you're young, you just, it's only a flesh wound, right? And then when you get to be my age, you sleep wrong and you hurt yourself, right? So it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm up. So I do what I do. I go get a glass of milk. I watch a little TV to try and, if my mind's on something. So I go back to bed at about 3 o'clock, and I'm like, I got to get, and then you say, I got to sleep. And it just doesn't work. So finally at 4 o'clock, I just gave up. I'm like, I'm going to go downstairs. I'm going to try and sleep on the couch. Maybe a different venue will change things for me a little bit. So I go down, and I need a noisemaker to actually sleep. So we have this little noisemaker that I grabbed that we use for Charlie when he's taking a nap at the house. And I go down to plug it in, and I'm down in my basement, and I'm standing right next to a door right here. And there's a window right here that will become important in a second. And I start to hear water dripping. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, there should not be water dripping. So my first thought was, well, maybe it's raining. So I look out the window. It's not raining. So I'm like, well, this isn't good. So then my next thought, which goes from, and by the way, things are going just fine. Life is good at the house. There's the door right here opens up to our mechanical room in our basement. So I'm like, surely not. So I open up the mechanical room, and the dripping sound gets louder, which is not what I wanted. So again, 4 o'clock in the morning, I go into the mechanical room. I look at the basin of our hot water heater, and it is full of water. And water is pouring out of the drain into the drain in the floor. Now, good news is all of that was functioning as it was supposed to function, right? So this is okay, I got this. So I'm looking, but I'm like, what's wrong with the water heater? And I, you get down, you hear it. I get my flashlight out so I can see, and my phone flashlight anyway. So I'm looking around, and I see there's a little drain that comes out of the water heater, so if you ever need to flush it. Supposedly you're supposed to flush it. I don't think anyone ever flushes their water heater, but it's there just in case. Did you say you do? I said what? Yeah, she said what? You're supposed to what? So, and it's a little plastic housing that goes into a metal connector. And they say it's for child safety, so it doesn't get hot. It's really it's cheaper than metal. So I go to, it's dripping, I can see it's dripping out of the bottom of that. So I go and I'm laying down, okay, it's a mechanical room, so there's not a lot of room. I'm laying down and I look at this thing and I just tweak it. And I'm not kidding, like this much to see if I can tighten it a little. The whole thing snaps off. And not even in my hand. It snapped and blew, because I don't know if you know this, but hot water tanks are pressurized. And it blew water. Thankfully, it missed most of me. I was drenched, but not like hot water. And we keep ours high. They tell you to do it at like below A. There's a C for a reason. So ours is at C, right? So now there's water gushing out of the 4 o'clock in the morning. I didn't think things could get worse than having water. I was so wrong. Now, the good news is I installed this thing, so I knew where the switch, I hit the cold water feed into the hot water heater, and it stopped gushing at least. Now it's just back to the drizzling. And by the way, there's a whole bunch of shoe boxes of my wife's sitting that it was blowing against that I got in trouble for. It's not my fault. So you think, well, okay, no problem, right? I got two options. Either I replace the entire water heater, or I see if I can replace the drain. So it's 5 o'clock in the morning, 4:30 in the morning now. I'm like, I'm not sleeping now. So I do what anyone would do, and I get on YouTube and see how easy this is going to be to fix, right? I'm awake anyway, and it seems pretty simple. I look up Home Depot. It's a $10 part. So I go to Home Depot later that morning. I get the new part. I think, okay, things are looking up, right? But the problem is, remember how that plastic piece broke off? Yeah, the threads are still in there, and they are stuck. Now, I have every extracting mechanism known to man, and I even went and bought one specifically for this purpose. It did not work. So finally, I got a little pick and a hammer, and I'm chiseling out all these and I got it apart. And I go to screw in the thing, and it will not go because the threads are all gummed up. And in that moment, I took a breath. I'm like, what can happen now? And I know I talk about Amazon a lot, but they save me because it's a 3/4 inch NPT thread. Do you know how many places you can go in Parker to find a 3/4 inch tap for a NPT thread? The answer is none. They're not around. Maybe down in Denver, but there's none hanging around in Parker. So I got on Amazon, and they said, we'll have it here by 5 o'clock. I love Amazon sometimes. Here's the good part of this story. I got the thread thing. I threaded it in, threaded it out, put the new one on. The hot water heater works. I was able to take a hot shower this morning. You're all welcome. Okay. The good news is, but in that moment, and we've all been there, right? We're like, what can happen now? In fact, I told my son this story this morning. He said, are there holes in the mechanical room? What do you mean holes? Well, from your anger being expressed. I said, no, this time we were okay. Our story this morning, we're in Genesis chapter 9, illustrates this very point, all right? Jacob, who we're in the middle of Jacob's story, has had a rough week. Things have gone from good to really bad, right? He's the youngest, but now he has his older son's birthright. He just took the blessing. But now everything kind of turned upside down because his brother was so angry he wanted to kill him. So his parents said, you got to get out of Dodge. And you need to go travel 700 miles to go see an uncle you've never met before. And along the way, we talked last week, he has an encounter with God, the stairway to heaven where God tells him, I'm going to be with you. Everything's going to be fine. Things are starting to look up for him, aren't they? Things are looking up for Jacob. So let's start reading the story. Genesis 29, starting in verse 1. Then Jacob hurried on. This is after the stairway to heaven encounter. Finally arriving in the land of the east. By the way, this is how Eastern literature often goes. This is one sentence that covers a week of travel. All right? But he gets to this land of the east where he's going. He saw a well in the distance. 3 flocks of sheep and goats laying in an open field beside it, waiting to be watered. But a heavy stone covered the mouth of the well. It was the custom there to wait for all the flocks to arrive before removing the stone and watering the animals. Afterward, the stone would be placed back over the mouth of the well. Jacob went over to the shepherds and asked, where are you from, my friends? We're here from Haran, they answered. Do you know a man there named Laban, the grandson of Nahor, he asked. Yes, we do. Is he doing well? Jacob asked. Yes, he's well, they answered. Look, here comes his daughter Rachel with his flock now. Jacob said, look, it's still broad daylight, too early to round up the animals. Why don't you water the sheep and goats so that they can go back out to pasture? We can't water the animals until all the flocks have arrived, they replied. Then the shepherds moved the stone from the mouth of the well, and we water all the sheep and goats. Jacob was still talking with them when Rachel arrived with her father's flock, for she was a shepherd. And because Rachel was his cousin, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and because the sheep and goats belonged to his uncle Laban, Jacob went over to the mouth of the well and moved the stone from its mouth and watered his uncle's flock. Then Jacob kissed Rachel, and he wept aloud. We're coming back to that sentence, don't worry. He explained to Rachel that he was her cousin on her father's side, the son of her aunt Rebekah. So Rachel quickly ran and told her father Laban. As soon as Laban heard that his nephew Jacob had arrived, he ran out to meet him. He embraced him and kissed him and brought him home. When Laban had told him this story, when Jacob told him this story, his story, Laban exclaimed, "You really are my own flesh and blood." After Jacob had stayed with Laban for about a month, Laban said to him, "You shouldn't work for me without pay just because we're relatives. Tell me how much your wages should be." Now Laban had 2 daughters. The older daughter was named Leah, and the younger one was Rachel. There was no sparkle in Leah's eyes. That is a horrible thing to say about someone. But Rachel had a beautiful figure and a lovely face. Since Jacob was in love with Rachel, he told her father, "I'll work for you for 7 years if you give me Rachel, your youngest daughter, as my wife." "Agreed," Laban replied. "I'd rather give her to you than to anyone else. Stay and work with me." So Jacob worked 7 years to pay for Rachel, but his love for her was so strong that it seemed to him but a few days. Aww. Like I said, things are looking up for Jacob, aren't they? I mean, you think about this. Things are really bad for Jacob. He's alone in the wilderness. He's only got a stone for a pillow, and God shows up, and now there's a whole series of happenings, right? These chance encounters. Jacob just happens upon a well on his way, and while you're traveling, it's always good to have a well. We don't have the whole well thing. What do we have? Gas stations, right? Oh, there's a 7-Eleven up ahead, right? I can get a big gulp and some Reese's Pieces, and I'm good to go, right? Actually, it's sunflower seeds if you're on a road trip. You have to have sunflower seeds on a road trip. It's the law. If you get pulled over and you're on a road trip and you don't have them, they'll give you a ticket. I'm sure it's true, all right? So, this is a welcome sign for him. It means a couple of things, right? Number one, it means what? Yeah, there's people around, and he's going to get a drink. So he's moving out of the no man's land. It's like moving when you're in Kansas. It's like when you come upon a city, you're like, whoa, right? There's something is happening. And this well just happens to be right outside the town where his uncle lives, the very uncle that he's looking for. And he just happens to ask, "Hey, do you guys by chance happen to know this guy named Laban?" And what's their answer? "Oh, yeah. Yeah, we know." In fact, just by happenstance, here comes his daughter Rachel. And Rachel shows up, comes with the sheep and goats. Whoa, because she's a shepherd. Wait, someone playing around with the lights back there? Is that your son? Ben, your dad said not to touch any buttons. I heard it. He's never going back there again. So Rachel just happens to be at the same spot where Jacob is. And Jacob just happens to fall in love at first sight. I mean, you can see it in a movie, right? I mean, there's this golden halo around Rachel. And we're not going to talk about the whole kissing cousin thing. When Rachel arrives, he kisses her and weeps. And there's this big question, what is going on? Why does he weep? Is the kiss that good? And the answer is, yeah. Is that good? And it's really this sense of this pent-up tension, this release of all the worry and anxiety that has been built up in Jacob for the last couple of weeks. He's home. And he tells Rachel who he is, and she goes and tells her father, and her father comes and is delighted, welcomes him in, and says, you're my flesh and blood, stay here. And then, what is it, like a week later, or a month later, Laban says to him, look, guy, you've been working, how about, you need to get paid? And Jacob comes up with a brilliant plan, which would not work today, by the way. Don't try this today. He says, look, I'll work for you for 7 years, no payment, if at the end of that 7 years you'll give me Rachel, your daughter, as my bride. And what does Laban say? Done. Deal. Right? Good to go. And Jacob works that 7 years. Again, one sentence covers 7 years, but he worked for that 7 years in the moment that made you all go, awe. But his love was so strong that it seemed to him but a few days. But as with any good story, is that where the story ends? No. There's a shoe ready to drop. And that shoe's going to drop. This is when things take a turn. And Jacob ends up getting a taste of his own medicine, all right? You know, Jacob, the deceiver, the one who tricked his brother and his father, basically his whole family, is going to get his comeuppance. All right, so let's pick up the story in verse 21. Finally, the time came for him to marry her, Rachel. I fulfilled my agreement, Jacob said to Laban, and I guarantee you this was on minute 1 after the 7 years was over. He goes, as I fulfilled my agreement, now give me my wife so that I can marry her. So Laban invited everyone in the neighborhood and prepped a wedding feast. But that night, when it was dark, Laban took Leah to Jacob and he slept with her. In parentheses, Laban had given Leah a servant Zilpah to be her maid. All right, verse 25. But when Jacob woke up in the morning, it was Leah. What have you done to me? Jacob raged at Laban. I worked 7 years for Rachel. Why have you tricked me? You get what's going on here? In fact, that word tricked right there is the exact word in Genesis 27:35 that his father used in talking to Esau about how Jacob tricked him. It's the exact same word. Jacob is getting what has been coming to him for a while. His comeuppance. Right now, this seems like, well, the big question that should be going through your mind is what? How did he not know? Come on. Well, there's 2 answers, and one is given here, and then I think one we can kind of surmise. Okay, what's the first answer that's given here? In verse 23. It was dark. Okay. Yeah, but remember, there's not a light switch, right? Just hit the light switch, check out who it is, turn it off. No, it was dark. What's under the surface here? What's that? He was probably drunk. They got this wedding feast, and when they throw a wedding feast, they throw a feast. In fact, you remember, go to the New Testament, and Jesus is at a wedding, and they run out of wine, and what do? They panic. They freak out. In fact, Jesus' mother says, you need to do something. And so he turns water into wine, right? The wine's got to keep flowing. So it's a good chance Jacob was drunk and it's dark. And he wakes up the next morning and who is there? It's not so much who is there, who's not there. Rachel. It's not Rachel. And he rages, what have you done? And then Jacob gives a pretty shrewd answer. Listen to verse 26. It's not our custom here to marry off a younger daughter ahead of the firstborn. Oh, that is full of irony, isn't it? Because Jacob is the younger who took everything from his oldest brother, and now Laban, his uncle, is saying, no, that's not the way we do. That's not how things work, pal. You got to marry the oldest daughter first. But then Laban says, I got a deal, but wait until the bridal week is over, then we'll give you Rachel too, provided you promise to work another 7 years for me. Now, if you're Jacob, what's going through your head right now? Wanting to punch a hole in something, right? But he says, okay, he realizes he's stuck. If he wants Rachel, this is the price that he's going to have to pay. So Jacob agreed to work 7 more years. And a week after Jacob had married Leah. Now, this seems like a good deal, right? I mean, what did Jacob get out of this deal? 2 wives. This is 2 for 1 deal. It's BOGO week in Haran, apparently. Right? A week after Jacob had married Leah, Laban gave him Rachel too. And Laban also gave Rachel a servant, Bilhah, to be her maid. Now those 2 maids, the reason those parentheses are important is going to become important next week. It's not so important this week. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind, and I'll remind you about that next week. So, this part we all knew was going to happen. Jacob slept with Rachel too, and he loved her much more than Leah. He then stayed and worked for Laban the additional 7 years. Jacob has been given a taste of his own medicine, hasn't he? He's been tricked, he's been fooled, but things are looking up. Right? Did he finally get what he wanted? Yes. He got Rachel. And by the way, he didn't have to wait the 7 years. So it's not 14 years. Laban's like, I trust you. You can have her now. It's like a deferred payment plan. You can have her now and just work for the 7 years. And Jacob's like, okay, what else am I going to be doing, right? Everything is looking up. But guess what? It doesn't stay that way. Jacob doesn't get one shoe to drop. He gets the second shoe to drop. Are you ready? Verse 31. When the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, he enabled her to have children, but Rachel could not conceive. Now, this is a big deal. This is huge. But Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Reuben. For she said, the Lord has noticed my misery, and now my husband will love me. She soon became pregnant again and gave birth to another son. She named him Simeon. For she said, the Lord heard that I was unloved and has given me another son. Then she became pregnant a third time and gave birth to another son. She named him Levi, for she said, surely this time my husband will feel affection for me, since I have given him 3 sons. And once again Leah became pregnant and gave birth to another son. She named him Judah, for she said, now I will praise the Lord. And then she stopped having children. Things are looking up, but they go bad. What happens in the household? Yeah, before the kids, what's happened? How does Jacob feel? Yeah, he loves Rachel, not so much Leah. Right? Who did he want to begin with? I don't know why this surprises anyone. He wanted Rachel. He kisses her at the well before they even really knew each other, and it's so good he weeps. And then he works 7 years for her and gets tricked, and Leah's like the consolation prize. That's how every woman in the room wants to feel, right? Like you're the add-on, the extra in the deal. And Jacob doesn't even pretend. He loves Rachel more than he loves Leah. But God sees this, and it seems like kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? What's that? Yeah, it's weird justice. Like God's like, okay, you love her. This is the one that's going to give you kids. And Leah starts having children, and Rachel does not. Now, this becomes more important in the next chapter for next week. But can you imagine that went well? That sat well with everybody? No, there's a lot of tension, a lot of dysfunction building up in this family. But the good news is they got 4 kids. Who are these 4 kids? Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Now, little foreshadowing. What do we know about those 4? What's important about those 4? Yeah, they're the first 4 of the 12 tribes of Israel. We're going to find out, of course, if that's 4, we're missing 8. We're going to find out about those 8 here coming up next week. Right now, you got 4. Leah has given birth to the first 4 of the tribes of Israel. Now, we don't really know that. They don't know what's going on here, just it's 4 kids. And you'll notice a pattern. Leah names her kids after what's going on in her life. I am so thankful we don't do that anymore. I'm glad that's gone, right? She names Reuben because it means the Lord has seen my misery. She says, God has seen my misery, and now my husband will love me. Does that come true? No. What's she trying to get? Whose love? Jacob's love. She's trying desperately to get Jacob's love. It doesn't work. So she has another son. And this one she named Simeon, which means that the Lord has heard me. He has seen me, the first son, and now he's heard me. He has heard my misery. Does it change anything? No. Then we get Levi, which means feeling affection for. And now her hope is, surely I've given her 3 sons. Surely he will love me now. He'll feel affection for me. But does he? No. And then Judah is born. And now Leah begins to change her mindset. Because Judah means, I will praise the Lord. Something has changed in Leah. She's no longer, by the 4th child, she says, it's not about Jacob, it's about God. And I will praise him, and I will worship him, and I will honor him. Now, none of this changes the tension or the situation at home. In fact, it makes it worse. And again, we'll get into that next week. Jacob still loves Rachel more, and things get worse because what's Rachel seeing here? She's not got any kids. Leah's having all these sons, and she's afraid. Leah wants Jacob's love. What's Rachel afraid of? Yeah, it's going to work. And I'm supposed to be the one. I need to give him another son. And so you feel this tension rising up, which we'll get to next week. To be continued. Yeah. I know in the day of streaming we don't get that much, but it's only 1 week. I remember watching the end of a series and you had to wait like 9-10 months till you got to see how things resolved. Who killed JR? I don't care. For now, I want us to focus on this story. There are 3 important lessons for us to take away from this account. 3 critical lessons. Number 1 is we see God's divine discipline on Jacob. What happens to Jacob, God's discipline, what did Jacob do wrong? What did Jacob do wrong? A lot. He alienated essentially his entire family. He fooled and tricked and deceived his brother and his father. He alienated them to the point where he had to leave. They say, okay, but, and there's like this thing in society, we would call that, people in our culture, we have a name for that. When you get what's coming to you, what do we call that? Karma. Right? We think karma. That's not a very biblical thing. It actually is. We just call it something different. What do we say? You reap what you sow. And that is very biblical. In fact, Galatians 6:7 says, don't be misled. You cannot mock the justice of God. You will always harvest what you plant. You will reap what you sow. What you put down, you pick up. What you do comes back to you. You cannot mock the justice of God. You cannot mock God. God is just and he doesn't ignore sin. Now, the difference is, karma is this idea that the world will get you. No. This is about you and God. This is about sin in your life, right? And it's not a transactional thing. Well, if I do so much good, then I'll get so much good back. This is if you sin, there are consequences for that sin. And in this case, what happens is Jacob reaps exactly what he had sown in his life. He was full of deceit and dishonesty, and that's what he got. And now he is living with the consequences of those actions, isn't he? I mean, the good news is that doesn't happen to us. Hebrews 12 says this, and have you forgotten the encouraging words? Remember, these are encouraging words that God spoke to you as his children. He said, my child, don't make light of the Lord's discipline and don't give up when he corrects you, for the Lord disciplines those he loves. He punishes each one he accepts as his child. As you endure this divine discipline, remember that God is treating you as his own children. Who ever heard of a child who's never disciplined by its father? Unfortunately, we have. We call them spoiled rotten. I lost my place. By its father. If God doesn't discipline you as he does all his children, it means that you're illegitimate and you're not really his children at all. Since we respected our earthly fathers who disciplined us, shouldn't we submit even more to the discipline of the Father of our spirits and live forever? For our earthly fathers disciplined us for a few years, doing the best they knew how. But God's discipline is always good for us, so that we might share in His holiness. No discipline is enjoyable while it's happening. It's painful. But afterward, there will be a peaceful harvest. Reap what you sow. A peaceful harvest of right living for those who are trained in this way. God disciplines the people He cares about. If He's not disciplining you, what does that mean? You're not His kid. You're illegitimate. He says right here, when God is disciplining you and trying to get rid of that sin in your life, it's for your own good. You ever look back on a period of your life that was horrendous and realize, that was hard, but man, I needed it. It's who I am today. I remember we have a men's group that meets on Monday nights, and we asked them, if you could have a time machine and go back in time and change anything about your life, would you change anything? And to a man, you know what they all said? No, I wouldn't. Because that's who I am today. That's made me who I am. That's how I have what I have. It's how I met my wife. It's how I got my kids. It's how I have this job. It's how I'm in this place. That's God's discipline doing its work in our lives. All right, that's lesson number 1. Lesson number 2 is about God's divine sovereignty. God's will always prevails, even when we fail. Right? You look at this story. Who did Jacob choose? Rachel. Who did God choose? Leah. And where do the first 4 tribes of Israel come from? Rachel or Leah? Leah. God had promised Jacob, you're going to have these descendants, just like I promised your father and his father before him. And now we begin to see the culmination of this. Out of this entire mess and dysfunction, God's plan unfolds. Right here we see the beginning of the 12 tribes of Israel. By the way, you look at 2 of them, the last 2 are very significant. What's the first of the last 2? The third son born. Levi. Who's Levi? How do we know Levi? That's the priestly line. So all of the priests of Israel come from Levi. And then the 4th son is Judah. What's so special about Judah's tribe? Yeah, before Jesus, but we get there. You get King David, you get all the king, that's where the line of the kings come from. So you have the priests and the kings come from these 2 tribes, which come from Rachel or Leah? Leah. God's plan prevails. And yes, out of the tribe of Judah, we ultimately get Jesus. So what if this didn't happen this way? God's plan always works. We've been talking about that for a couple of weeks, haven't we? Like, Pastor, we get it. The good news is the same is true for us. 1 Thessalonians 5:23 says, "Now may the God of peace make you holy in every way, and may your whole spirit and soul and body be kept blameless until our Lord Jesus Christ comes again. God will make this happen, for He who calls you is faithful." You read that and you think, what does that have to do with this? How are you going to be kept blameless until Jesus returns? Is it by your power? No. By whose? His. Right? God will make this happen because He is faithful. God disciplines you for your own good, and He is faithful to you for your own good. Are we seeing a pattern? The third lesson is God's divine love. God shows compassion on the overlooked. He sees Leah. He sees that she is unloved, and what does He do for her? He blesses her. He gives her children. He takes action. He showed compassion on her and her situation. Now, that makes things worse, but is that God's fault? No, that's our fault, as we're going to see. All the bad stuff that happens here is not because God was faithful. It's because the people following God didn't let God do God's thing. Could Jacob have said, God, I'd really like Rachel. Do you think he'd have gotten Rachel? I'm giving you the answer. Yes. And would we still have the 12 tribes? Yes. Could it have been less painful? Yes. And the same is true for us. Romans 5. when we were utterly helpless, Christ came at just the right time and died for us sinners. Now, most people would not be willing to die for an upright person, though someone might perhaps be willing to die for a person who's especially good. But God showed his great love for us by sending Christ to die for us while we were still sinners. And since we have been made right in God's sight by the blood of Christ, he will certainly save us from God's condemnation. For since our friendship with God was restored by the death of his Son, while we are still his enemies, we will certainly be saved through the life of his Son. So now we can rejoice in our wonderful new relationship with God, because our Lord Jesus Christ has made us friends of God. While we were still sinners, God showed his love for us. Just like Leah was unloved and God took action, we were unloved and broken and needed help. And what did God do? He helped us. And by the way, that help goes all the way back to this story. Because you get these tribes, and out of the tribes come Israel, and then you get all the rest of the great parts of the story. But ultimately it leads to Jesus, which is God saying, I see you, I hear you, I know what's going on in your life, and you may feel like the next shoe is about to drop or it's already dropped, but Jesus is saying, I've got you. So what do we do with all of this? 3 simple things. Accept his discipline and grow as a result of it. Accept his plan and prosper as a result of it. And accept his love and rejoice because of it. It's pretty simple, isn't it? It's simple to hear while we're sitting here, right? What happens when we walk out the door and the other shoe drops? When you touch the little plastic part on the water heater and it shoots boiling, scalding water at you. Do you trust God in that moment? What did I get out of that event? Burns? Thankfully, no, but could have been. I got a new tool out of it, right? I mean, if anyone else needs a 3/4 inch NPT threader, you just let me know. I got it. It's hanging out, and I guarantee I'll never use it again for the rest of my life, but I've got it. Yeah, I probably am. If you need it, give me a call. I gain knowledge. I have a new brass fitting instead of a plastic fitting. Things are better. Can I tell you that I was still a little worried last night? Guess what I did right before I went to bed last night? I checked the water heater. I had to make sure, right? And this morning when I turned on the shower, I confess, I was a little bit of this. And by the way, when it's been off, it spews water, air everywhere. It's not fun, right? I learned something. Now that's just a stupid little water heater. What about the really big things in your life? God has something for you in that. Accept his discipline, accept his plan, accept his love. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for Jacob's story. And not just that he messes up, but that we know we mess up too. And through all of that, you remain faithful, and we are so thankful for that. Father, I know there are people in this room right now who they feel like not just one shoe has fallen, not just 2 shoes have fallen, and sometimes it feels like the entire shoe store has fallen on top of us, and it just never is going to stop. Father, help us in those moments just to pause for a second, and to, if there's discipline going on, to accept that discipline, to learn and to go from it, and to accept your plan, not ours, but your way, and ultimately to accept your love and rejoice in it, to have joy because it proves that we are your children and that you are working on our behalf, and you prove that in Jesus Christ. And if life is great, Father, we are thankful for that. We know that it doesn't always stay the same, but let us not live our lives in fear, but live our lives with joy. Either way. And all God's people said, amen.